actually pushes this forward and emphasizes it, which means that these options can be looked at and evaluated more rationally than they would have if the government did not step in. So we actually don't take away the amount of choice, we increase its quality, we empower them to make better choices. No thank you, madam. But then they said, such an emphasis signals a stance of morality. This undercuts the neutrality of the government and this undercuts religion. Now, on the first level, this isn't true, because the question isn't on whether or not to have sex. The question right here is about how we manage that phenomenon. This is not going to affect religious people who believe in abstinence. It isn't going to affect religious people who believe in abstinence. And if such a stance did cause individuals to forsake religion, it's not an issue of the government. In fact, we think that the issue is with perhaps even these individuals' conviction in their own religion. Because we've seen that the issue here is that we're not attempting to solve a problem of sex or sexually transmitted infections. What we're attempting to do is manage it. We believe that religion does have its methods of managing this problem. We think that what the government is doing is not encouraging more profligate sexual behavior, but what it's doing is managing it. Because we think that that in itself is the most neutral stance to take. And if you remember, we've also talked about in our policy of education that we're taking as well. So it's not only about the government pushing forward some kind of policy which alters the minds of individuals, but it's about increasing the understanding of why the government is doing that as well. Now they've talked about how this means that the government is taking a moral stance, but even if the government was taking a moral stance, we think that that's perfectly justified, because the government always and often takes moral stances to protect society and save lives. No thank you, sir. Now we give you many examples. We give you the examples like sin tax on items like alcohol, like cigarettes. Governments often take moral stances by basically affecting society's decisions on whether or not to use these goods, by increasing the amount of cost that these goods have because of the fact that they're demerit goods, because of the fact that they harm society in terms of public health. So the government often does things like putting extra taxes on cigarettes, or putting photos of people who have lung cancer on cigarette boxes. And the reason is because the government is actively trying to ensure that public health is preserved, quality of life is preserved, and that fundamentally is the mandate of the government. It's not about whether this is right or this is wrong. It's about the government creating the best quality of life and the best ability to save lives within society. That mandate always exists, whether or not there are religious groups, hold on a moment there, who exist within society. And we've also seen the fact that even if this was the case, that there were religious people in society, religion clearly hasn't dealt with the problem, because there's been seen a tendency again and again and again for individuals to want to engage in sexual behavior. We've given you many statistics. I'm going to give you even more after I take this PY.
Could you please ask me a question of what your problem is with condoms being sold for money if it is certain 20 cents or something?
Madam, number one, if condoms were sold for 20 cents, we think that if you believe in government subsidy of condoms, then that is in itself a principal concession that the government ought to do something. But the issue here, and the dividing issue, is that we believe that when condoms are provided for free, that is in itself an ability and an increase in accessibility to individuals, number one, because it reduces the cost, number two, because it creates a counterculture, and number three, because it pushes forward these issues and emphasizes the issues of public health. That is something which can be done only in a way if these condoms are provided absolutely free. Because in principle, when a good is provided absolutely free, unlike other medical goods, like other kinds of medicine, that inherently emphasizes its need in society, emphasizes its worth, and directly tackles the public health issue which is at hand, which is precisely the kind of measures the government would take if there was, for example, an epidemic of flu, of influenza, or an epidemic of something like swine flu. The government would then, of course, provide medicine for these diseases for free, and provide this medicine at highly subsidized cost to deal with a particular problem. That's the difference. We believe that the government cannot leave it up to individuals to purchase this. The government needs to take an active step in pushing it forward. Now we believe, and furthermore, we think that even if religion is important, religion exists in society insofar as it does not cause harm. We give you the example of how Christianity and Islam and Catholicism are all tolerated, except when they turn to things like extremism, like hate speech, like violence, and that's when the government steps in to defend society, not because it's against religion, but because it's neutral in defending and saving lives. Now it's even worse in their case, because what they're using is they're allowing religion to propagate social harm, especially when most religion and most moderate pastors and most moderate imams in mosques do believe in contraception. Only the extremist ones are the ones that they're defending other people who burn contraception on their pulpits, whether in Africa or even in the southern United States, in states like Kansas, and that in itself is worse because that perpetuates negative externalities in terms of STIs continuing to become prevalent. We think that it's worse in their case because they're against things like AIDS, where the United Nations gives out condoms to people in Nigeria where AIDS infections at a rate of 60%. We think it's worse in their case because freedom of choice in itself is limited. Because when people are fall sick with sexually transmitted diseases, all future choice is limited because of the debilitating condition they have. When the government steps in to protect them and protect all their future choices because it ensures their quality of life, that is admirable, that is neutral, that is the responsibility of the government. We're on to this last throwaway point about irresponsibility. And here they've said that education is something which is needed to ensure that people take contraception seriously. Now, firstly, we tell you that this isn't mutually exclusive. Even if you're pushing for education for people to understand why contraception is important, we think on the first hand, that concedes that you show that there is a need for society to understand what contraception is about and to manage the problems that unfettered sexual behavior has in society. And secondly, we've already told you why that already occurs in our model as well. But even if education was important, we think that the government still has a duty to push forward free condoms and free contraception because that is in itself a form of education as well and a form of setting up to society. So at the end of the day, there's only been one side who's actually been able to engage with the problems that we see in society, recognize how widespread they are, and actually take positive measures. It hasn't been side opposition, it's been side proposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's imagine I'm standing in front of a choice. Either I am going to use a condom or I am going not to use the condom. That's what this debate is about. Right now, I'm dealing with this decision. And if I willingly, there are two options why I would not use a condom. Either I don't want it or I can't afford it. Those are two basic options why I would not decide for this option. If I don't want it and I can't afford it, I'm in a developed country where it is not actually a high price. Logical reason is that the state which should care for, as we heard, for my health and for my future well-being, should encourage me to buy this thing, to use it. I should be encouraged if I don't want to use this thing, and therefore the point of education and educating comes in. If I'm not wealthy enough to buy this thing, as we heard, a piece of rubber, therefore that means that the society, the state I'm living in, doesn't provide enough welfare, the social standard isn't high enough. Therefore, state should support me, as we heard. No, thank you. However, if I'm living in such a poor state, I can't even afford this commodity. That means the state would not be able to support the global society-wide distribution of condoms and contraceptives because the situation is so low. For example, in different countries in Africa, we heard there have been different problems. The proper education infrastructure is not as supply, and this would be very high demand on the state to supply that much. Yes.
Both sides recognize the problems of STIs and unwanted pregnancies. Could you be the first speaker on your team to tell us what's your solution?
To the sexually transmitted diseases and unwanted pregnancies. Well, we would say it is the responsibility of the individual to use a condom, and as I said, I'm standing in front of a decision, and I can either buy it or not buy it, and if I don't want to buy it, or I don't have money for it, as I just said, that's the division which applies to this. So, second of all, I would like to like to address the point of authority of state. There has been quite a dispute whether state is imposing some view or is not by distributing free condoms. Let me state that as opposition team believes, we stand for neutrality of state. That means that state should not take a stand in influencing the individual things. But I want to know what you're going to say. The thing is that you are saying that by distributing condoms, we won't force anything to the people. We won't influence people by giving them this free choice. However, as we clearly stated, the state has an authority. It has an authority. All citizens in the state look up to state, and as the state decides what's wrong and right, there is a certain level of authority. However, if the state now comes and says, all right, guys, take this, it's for free, it's good to use it, it is clearly said, and we could have heard that from different proposition speakers, that that is applying some kind of impression to the people.
Yes. Sir, we see with medicine the government makes all options available. Why is this not the case with contraception, when all options are being laid out and not forced on people?
I don't understand. The options are there. The options are there. You can walk into any store, into any grocery store, and there are condoms right there. You can even pick a taste or whatever. The choice are there. However, by giving these things for free, by distributing them freely, the government goes a step further and it presents a view that everyone should use it because it's for free. If we're not saying we want to ban condoms or take them off the stores or something because government would promote it, no thanks. We're saying that by giving it free, we're imposing some kind of view. I hope you understand that. To summarize what our opposition team wanted to say, we had basically three arguments, starting with the relationship between state and people. And we believe, as I said, that the state should remain neutral. The state should remain neutral so it doesn't influence people and the authority. Oh, and by the way, I'll skip a second. Third point of our second speaker was that if something is for free, people don't value it. People tend to not value it.
So, if we've shown you how the state often makes moral decisions for society to protect itself, like in the case of suicide, like in the case of alcohol, and like in the case of cigarettes, why is contraception anything?
Well, you see, the thing is, the state is not enforcing or banning the condoms as it would be in other cases. It is the choice is there. The state is not taking the choice away from people. However, by freely distributing, it's going, as I said, again, further and imposing a view that you should use these, that it is okay. Let me get back to our third point. The third point of our second speaker was that the free charge of contraceptive would mean that the people would not value it, as an example in Africa, because if you have something, you buy something, and it costs, let's say, €1, you know that for that €1, you had to work for 30 minutes, for 1 hour, you had to work for some time, you see the energy, you see the time, you value the thing you buy. However, if you get something for free, there is a high probability that this free commodity will be wasted or misused, as we had the example of nets against mosquitoes which spread malaria in Africa. Let me summarize this whole debate. The free choice, which is here, can be split into two ways. Either have the condom or not have the condom. If I don't want to have the condom, there are either two reasons. Either I don't want the condom and therefore going to encourage to buy the condoms, as our team said, or there's I can't afford a condom, and then there's a problem which proposition team did not address completely. We couldn't hear good solution from them. Apart from this, authority to state is very important, and opposition team, we believe that the state should not impose any view on the citizens, not influence them, and that is done by spreading contraceptives for free. So I would say we believe that contraceptives should not be provided free of charge.
Now my pleasure to invite Hana to present the reply speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, Team Proposition wants people to doesn't want people, to buy these things, but wants people to get these things because that is the solution of their problem. But at the same time, they are not encouraging people to get them and not infringing on freedom of choice. Ladies and gentlemen, we see a slight contradiction in the team line of Team Singapore. And this contradiction, we believe, is one of a very important value because it is basically the most important thing that they're saying and the basic premise that they are building their whole case on. In my speech, I'll first talk about government influence and again how this actually does encourage people and why Team Slovakia thinks that is wrong. And secondly, about the responsibility of the state and how the state should not be the one to care for all the problems in the state and to make people dependent on it. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, Team Singapore said that their solution in the long term is to get people to get these condoms. Otherwise, they make no sense. If they are not encouraging people to get more condoms, then their problem of too many children and too many diseases will not be solved. What they have been saying all along is that unless the fact was that nobody could afford these condoms or these contraceptives, then they simply want to encourage people to get them, people who would not get them otherwise in their own free will. Because their own free will today is that they can buy them. The whole spectrum of options that they have is to go to the store and buy condoms, but they have not made that choice in today's world. And since they have not made that choice, their own free will is not to get condoms. But once we make it free, we encourage them. The state signals to them that yes, you should get these condoms, trying to infringe on that free choice that has already been made to, on the other hand, get these condoms. Well, why do we think that is bad? Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should be neutral in such cases because using condoms is actually a quite controversial thing that a great amount of people are against because of their religion and because of their perception of what is right and what is wrong. And when my religion tells me to do something and then my state tells me that no, your religion is actually not exactly right, I feel ostracized by the government. I feel discriminated. And ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should represent its people and the whole amount of options that they have in giving them the opportunity to buy condoms, not encouraging them to get them, and oftentimes going against their perception of the world. Ladies and gentlemen, what is our solution? We said education. We said responsibility. We said we want to get people to buy them if they want them. If they don't want them, don't buy them. And if the problem is in education, if people don't know that they have the option of buying it, then let's tell them, let's educate them in that matter, but not encourage and not get them to take the condom by making it free and by promoting that option as the top options of all of the ones they have. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the second point. We talked about responsibility. We talked about people being responsible for their own lives, caring for their own situations. We don't want a state that comes in and solves all of the problems in the state, taking irrationality and irresponsibility, which were presented as the premise for the whole case line of Team Singapore in the first speech. We do not want to take these things as premises. We want to take care of these things. We want to make people more responsible and make people more rational. We do not want people to simply be irresponsible and as a consequence of that give them this option. We want to deal with the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the state should be here as the body that represents all of its people, that is neutral on the different controversies inside of the country, and at the same time that promotes responsibility, not irrationality in these people. And combined with all the other things that we've been saying, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that no, contraception should definitely not be given for free.
Thank you. Yeah, we now invite Mark to present the clarifications first.
I'm going to take you down a trudge on the dark streets of side opposition, and then I'll take you on a walk through the streets of side opposition. In the world of side opposition, the government was paralyzed. The government never intervened when any groups disagreed. We told them, what about countries where there are religions like Buddhism or the Jehovah's Witnesses who don't stand for violence? In their world, they wouldn't have a military because these people didn't agree and the government always needed to appease religious groups. This meant that China, which has people believing in religion, wouldn't have an army. This might be a good thing for India, it's a very bad thing for the people within their countries. But then even neutral policies in the world were undermined because we asked them, because in their world, governments weren't allowed to make a moral judgment. We asked them why. Joshua in his own PO, I asked them, why can government say that suicide is bad, but in their world they can't? They never responded to it. In fact, later on they conceded it. They said that states always make moral decisions. They said it's fine for governments to subsidize condoms, so long as they don't give it for free. Why? What is the moral distinction between paying 20 cents for a condom and not paying for it at all? They never clarified that out. They were fine with government intervention, just not for free. They never answered why. But then, what did they concede? They conceded, no. But then in their world, but moreover in their world, cost was always a hindrance. Because prison systems are expensive to maintain, they would do away with jails anyway. Because they said as long as governments can't afford it, maybe they shouldn't do it anyway. Poor countries like Somalia, African countries like they brought up, having current account deficits will always be justified in not doing anything in the society. Richer countries like America will always do away with expensive policies like healthcare or education because, as the first speaker said, it doesn't save a life and it's not essential. What exactly is the world they're living in? What exactly is the role of the government? But worse than that, the government was childish because the government of certain countries in Africa was not appreciated for mosquito nets. They will stop giving mosquito nets. Because some individuals sold mosquito nets in the black market, they let millions of people in Somalia and of course Africa die of malaria. That was the childish government that they stood for. But worse, in their case, people died. In their first speaker, they recognized the problem and we told you that religious perspectives and choice is not enough for this problem. They recognized that, but they refused to deal with it. They never told you how they intend to deal with it, they just said we expect choice. They expect individuals to make a logical thought process for something as illogical as sex. We gave them 2 yardsticks to manage the problems of STIs and unwanted pregnancies and to promote responsible sex. They never dealt with any of those 2 yardsticks. But what about outside, the brighter side? Outside recognized the problems and dealt with it. We recognize that governments have the responsibility to take care of the people. We recognize that government should not be limited by cost because there will be always other options like UNICEF providing free condoms, for instance. We recognize that the terror of a poor state can only be compounded by an apathetic government. But then we recognize even more the implications of making it free. At least we make it affordable. At least we provide the option to everybody. We never said that individuals have to use it from the get-go. We said that it's optional. But at least we allowed the option. And then after that, we told you how it saved lives. We told you about unwanted pregnancies, we told you about sexually transmitted infections, but more chilling than this was the fact that they never cared. And then when our second speaker finally told you about how we encourage sexual responsibility, they didn't even bother to deal with it. So at the end of the debate, whose side was better? Whose side was more moral? At least for me, I'd rather walk with side opposition.
Right, thank you to both teams. For what I think the judges will agree with very interesting, stimulating debate. And now, of course, it's our job to make decisions. And we'll peace and we'll try and
Tak tá, čo sa pila, ale tak už pomerne dávno. Podľa mňa tak ešte bude trvať nejaká zmenu cesta, ale tak ja predpokladám, že do jednej by si mal prísť cesty spraviť nejaké žrádlo a tak na takú tiež. Okay.
Very much. I thought actually, I mean, the second speaker was, I think, in the same category as about certainly their third speaker was much weaker.
It's just another experience of data.
Yeah.
It was speakers like
I believe they're the working team, I think.
probably, yes. Listen to me. Okay, so when we compare it to the team, I mean, I'm looking at space debates. That's why we have to do
apart from commenting it was a good debate, nice comments about that.
Well, it's much better than the average.
Yeah, it's definitely a better on both sides. I was quite impressed with their first speaker, Peter. I'm very impressed really with the second speaker. Who didn't seem really to have much line to follow. Good though for all of them was, apart from Jana again in one case, but otherwise they were all pretty good with information. And yeah, oh right, the struggles, but I mean they're all pretty good timing.
Yeah, it's fortunate. It's quite actually comparing the secret quality of experience with Steve and BSDC style. So make decisions, don't debate this. It's quite apparent that this they work with the format, they can tell us when the other speakers already mentioned during the debate and they address it for national. So it's nice to see that this is difference. It's obviously usually about teams like Singapore or something, teams competing at the BSDC level. Our teams, yes.
So it's unanimous. I thought the only thing that I would comment about Singapore was that it seemed to me that there was quite a bit to be said about the situation in Africa. And they didn't really stretch that out as much as they might have done. You know, when you look at countries like Uganda and so on, with the aid situation. I mean, I think the argument that the choice was dealt with pretty well. Okay, you can mention. First of all, the judges agreed that that was one of the best debates we've heard in this tournament, on both sides. So congratulations to both teams, particularly to the Slovakian team, because I really don't think I have played the English foreign language for Singapore. I mean, it's one of your 7 languages. So, definitely the foreign language for Slovakia. It was very commendable.